Hello and welcome. Thank you for taking some time to watch our recorded Small Business HR Essentials session. We know that HR compliance can feel like a messy and an intimidating topic, so today we're going to break things down and make it practical, clear, and achievable. Before we begin, I want to highlight our Requirements for Small Businesses guidebook that we have available for purchase on our website. Everything that I talk about today is discussed in more detail in this guide. It includes a practical set of tools that you can start using right away, such as a checklist of required policies, trainings, and postings, copies of or links to the mandatory workplace posters, links to required online training, a new hire checklist, an annual compliance checklist, and our contact information if you would like more support or have follow-up questions. It's really designed to help you stay organized and confident with your HR requirements throughout the year. Our agenda is as follows. We will walk through the employment acts you should be familiar with, the required posters, policies, and trainings you need to have in place, and a few additional recommendations that make life easier for small business owners. The session does not cover every single HR requirement, but it does highlight the key items that matter the most as a strong starting point. If you have any questions following the presentation, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We will share our contact information at the end. Over the next few slides, I'm going to walk through some of the key employment legislations and compliance items. As an employer in Ontario, these are 5 key pieces of legislation that you should be familiar with. They're not the only legislation, but they are the ones that we work with the most. There's the Employment Standards Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act, which is administered by the WSIB, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and the Ontario Human Rights Code. On the next few slides, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what each act is, why it exists, who it applies to, and some common pitfalls and best practices to keep in mind. Now, for those of you with remote workplaces or remote employees, these requirements still apply. The Occupational Health and Safety Act was actually recently updated to include remote workers, although really it has always applied to them. If you are remote, when we speak about this section, you'll want to ensure that your staff have access to your policies and your documents on, say, a shared drive in place of where they would typically be posted on a physical health and safety board in the workplace. You may still need a health and safety rep or a joint health and safety committee, depending on headcount, and you are responsible for ergonomics and general home/work safety considerations. We will walk through each act to help you understand what you need to know and what actions to take. First, we will look at the Employment Standards Act, or more commonly known as the ESA. This is a foundational provincial law in Ontario, setting out the minimum standards that most employers must follow. It includes things like minimum wage, hours of work, overtime, vacation entitlement, public holidays, leaves of absence, and rules around terminations and layoffs. A few things to keep in mind. The ESA outlines minimums, not necessarily best practices. You can always offer more, but you cannot offer less than what the ESA states. So a good example would be an employer offering 3 weeks of vacation to start, rather than the minimum 2 weeks of vacation that is mandated by the ESA. Keep that in mind. You don't always have to go with the minimum. Another thing, when you are looking up information online, make sure you are checking the source. I say that keeping AI in mind. If you are using AI or searching things online, always double check your source. If your business is provincially regulated, you must follow Ontario's provincial laws. The Federal Labor Code applies only to federally regulated employers, such as banks, airlines, and telecommunications. This is a common point of confusion for small business owners. A few common pitfalls show up again and again. One is misclassifying workers as independent contractors when they should be employees. Another is unpaid overtime or not tracking hours accurately. Just because someone is salaried does not mean that they are automatically exempt from overtime. Same with the title of manager. Simply having manager in your title does not automatically disqualify them from overtime. Termination is another risk area, especially when contracts are outdated, unenforceable, or are missing clear notice language. The consequences of these things can be significant. Employers can face fines, orders to provide payback, and legal claims that become very costly very quick. A few best practices make a really big difference. Keeping accurate and up-to-date employment records, use clear, legally reviewed employment contracts, invest in basic manager training so that supervisors understand their responsibilities. These steps help you to protect your business, to support your employees, and to maintain a positive reputation while avoiding unnecessary penalties and claims. A few roles are partially exempt from certain rules, like managers and some licensed professionals. Our word of advice is always assume the ESA applies unless a specific exemption clearly fits. The Occupational Health and Safety Act, or OSHA, sets the minimum standards for keeping workers safe. It outlines the rights and responsibilities of employers and workers and is enforced by the Ministry of Labor. For employers, the obligations are significant. You must take every reasonable precaution to protect your workers. That includes providing a safe workplace, training staff on the hazards in their roles, supplying the right equipment, and offering proper supervision. You are also responsible for establishing safety procedures and appointing either a health and safety representative or a joint health and safety committee, depending on headcount, which I'll get to in the next slide. Workers also have responsibilities under this act. They must follow the Occupational Health and Safety Act and any workplace policies or procedures that relate to safety. They must use or wear the required protective equipment and report hazards, defective equipment, or any other safety concerns to their supervisor. Workers have 3 fundamental rights under the Act, which you have hopefully heard of before: the right to know about hazards, the right to participate in health and safety matters, and the right to refuse unsafe work. The Ministry of Labor can visit a workplace at any time. This may be a proactive inspection or a reactive one following an incident or a workplace complaint. During an inspection, employers must cooperate fully with the inspector. That means allowing the inspector to enter, speak with staff, review documentation, and ask questions. Being prepared makes these visits much smoother. As I mentioned, under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, every employer must involve workers in health and safety through either a health and safety representative or a joint health and safety committee, depending on the number of workers that you have in your workplace. We've put a chart here on this slide that provides a clear breakdown for you. So if you have 1 to 5 employees, there is no requirement for a health and safety representative or a joint health and safety committee. Generally speaking, there is of course an exception, that being that it is required only if a designated substance regulation applies. And as a side note, a designated substance is a highly hazardous chemical. There are 11 of them, and it includes things like arsenic or asbestos. If you have 6 to 19 employees, you must have 1 health and safety rep. The representative must be selected by the workers, and they cannot have managerial duties. Again, there is an exception if a designated substance regulation applies, and in that case, a joint health and safety committee is required. I will get to those details in a minute. Health and safety representative duties include things like representing the workers' health and safety concerns, inspecting the workplace, identifying hazards, making recommendations, talking to workers, being involved in investigations, reviewing reports. Basic health and safety representative training is encouraged, and there are a number of websites that offer this online training. Joint health and safety duties are similar, and they include things like identifying and reporting workplace hazards, conducting regular workplace inspections, making recommendations to the employer, participating in investigations of injuries and work refusals, hold quarterly meetings, and promoting a health and safety among workers. If you have 20 plus employees, you are required to have a joint health and safety committee. For those organizations with 20 to 49 employees, you must have at least 2 members, and those with 50 plus employees must have a minimum of 4 members. For both categories, 2 members, 1 worker rep, and 1 management rep need to be certified and receive basic Joint Health and Safety Committee training. Again, you can find some of those training programs online. Once you have a health and safety rep or a Joint Health and Safety Committee in place, their names and work locations must be posted somewhere that employees can easily find, usually on your health and safety board. This helps employees know who to go to with questions or concerns. Common pitfalls that we see in small businesses under the Occupational Health and Safety Act are not having the required safety training in place, such as workplace violence and harassment training, WMIS training, or health and safety awareness training for supervisors and workers. We'll look at these ones a little bit later on. Another one is that hazards often go unreported or undocumented, or there is no proper process in place to report these hazards. Another common issue is not having a health and safety representative or joint health and safety committee when one is required, or having a health and safety board that is outdated. Similarly, for remote workers, is not having the information stored in an accessible place for all employees to be able to access it. These are all areas that inspectors look at closely when they're entering the workplace. Inspectors also use ticketing to enforce compliance, anywhere from $250 to $1,000 fines. So what may seem like smaller issues can still come with large penalties. Best practices help you stay ahead of these problems. You can do so through basic risk assessments, maintaining clear safety policies, ensuring your health and safety board is up to date, documenting incidences, and ensuring that you have a functioning health and safety representative or joint health and safety committee. As previously mentioned, the Ministry of Labor can visit at any time, so being organized is key. And if you do find yourself in a situation where the Ministry of Labor shows up, our advice is really simple. If there is something that you do not have in place, be honest about it. Explain that this is something that you are working on or something still outstanding. Their role is to identify gaps, and they will be asking questions until they find one. That's a normal part of their process. If they do identify an issue, they will give you a written order with clear timeline for addressing it, and you will be expected to complete it within that window. Moving on to the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act, the WSIA is the legislation that sets out the rules for workplace injury reporting, benefits, and return to work requirements. The Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, or the WSIB, is the organization that carries out these rules. They manage claims, collect premiums, provide benefits to injured workers, and ensure that employers stay compliant. Its purpose is to keep workplaces safe and to provide support and benefits to workers who are injured on the job or develop an occupational illness or disease. It covers compensation for work-related injuries and supports the return to work process. To be entitled to benefits under the WSIA, a person must be a worker in a business or industry that is covered by the Act. Most industries are covered, but there are a few exceptions, so we recommend checking out their website for more information. Common pitfalls usually involve delays or gaps in the reporting process. This is super important. Employers must report a workplace injury to the WSIB within 3 business days from the moment that they are informed. Employers can face late reporting penalties of $250 to $1,000. Employers should also be aware that late reporting can affect the employee's ability to receive these benefits. Poor or unstructured return to work practices and missing or incomplete documentation also cause major problems. Best practices focus on being timely and organized. Report injuries on time, keep clear and complete documentation, and have a return to work program that supports employees safely getting back to their duties. These steps protect both the business and the worker. The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, or the AODA, is Ontario's accessibility law. It aims to remove and prevent barriers for people with disabilities by setting standards in customer service, information and communications, employment, transportation, and the built environment. It applies to almost every organization in Ontario, including private businesses and nonprofits, as long as you have at least one employee. From an employment perspective, people with disabilities should be able to access your workplace, your services, and all information without encountering any barriers. These standards impact how businesses operate and deliver their services, from building access to hiring practices. The 5 AODA standards cover the customer service standard, which ensures accessible service policies, staff training, and communication for clients with disabilities. The information and communication standard requires that public information, whether it's print or digital, is made accessible, and it does include accessible websites. The employment standard, employers must offer equal access to job opportunities, to accommodations, and career advancement to their potential candidates and their employees. The transportation standard makes public transit and service provider vehicles accessible to everyone. And the design of public spaces standard guides how outdoor spaces like parks, sidewalks, or parking spaces are constructed to be inclusive. So they don't apply to every organization. It really does depend in which industry you operate. The best practices from an employment perspective are straightforward. If you have less than 20 employees, the main standard that you have to meet is to train all of your staff in a timely way so that everyone understands all of their functions and responsibilities. Make sure your workplace, your customer experience, and all of your digital content are accessible to all. These small steps go a long way in meeting AODA requirements and supporting your team and your customers. There is free training available online, and we generally share those links with all of our clients. Moving on to the Ontario Human Rights Code. In Ontario, all human rights are protected by this code. It is a provincial law that helps to make sure that everyone enjoys equal rights and opportunities without discrimination in areas such as employment, housing, and services. The code prohibits actions that discriminate against people based on a protected ground, which you can see on the slide. Those are the protected grounds which are in a protected social area, and employment is a protected social area. Every person has the right to equal treatment and employment without discrimination based on any of these grounds. It's worth noting that in Ontario, most human rights claims come from the workplace, which is why understanding your responsibilities as an employer is so important. The term employment under the code is very broad, so it covers your employees, but it may also cover any independent contractors, interns, or even volunteers that you have with you. The right to equal treatment applies at every stage of the employment relationship. That includes applying for a job, being recruited, training, promotions, transfers, and apprenticeships. It also covers decisions around pay, hours of work, overtime, benefits, scheduling, discipline, performance evaluations, layoffs, and dismissal. A key area is disability. People with disabilities have the right to accommodation, which means employers must provide the equipment, services, or adjustments needed to allow them to do their job unless it causes undue hardship. There is a really high bar for meeting undue hardship, so we won't cover that in this presentation. It can be a really complicated process, so this is generally something that we support our clients on a case-by-case basis. But overall, the code shapes how you hire, manage, and support your team. When you understand it, you lower the risk of complaints and create a more fair and respectful workplace. Common pitfalls show up when employers don't have the basics in place. One of the biggest issues is not having an anti-discrimination or an anti-harassment policy, or having one that no one actually follows. If you have more than 6 employees, this must be written. If you have less than 6, it does not have to be in writing, but we would recommend you do so anyway. If you're looking to grow, then you may as well have the basics in place for when you do have more than 6 employees. Another area is weak accommodation processes, especially when the managers don't know the steps to take or they fail to document the process. A third pitfall is employers sometimes unintentionally violate the Ontario Human Rights Code by using biased job postings or interview questions, or by making hiring decisions based on protected grounds instead of job-related competencies. Employers may face human rights complaints, legal settlements, and very real impacts on morale and trust within the team. These issues also tend to escalate quickly when they are not handled properly at the start. A few best practices help you stay ahead. Make sure that you have clear, accessible policies, have a simple, consistent accommodation process so that employees know how to ask for help and managers know how to respond. Provide basic diversity and inclusion or accommodation training so that people understand their responsibilities. Work with human resources to develop standardized and structured interview processes to avoid potentially just discriminatory language in job postings or interview questions. This creates a more supportive workplace and helps you prevent unnecessary claims. So in quick summary, for many small businesses, we know that HR compliance feels like something that you'll get to later on. The reality is that not having the right policies, agreements, or training in place can cost you in financial penalties and in employee trust. It also creates unnecessary stress when something goes wrong. When you're compliant, you're more likely to avoid fines and legal risks, and you reduce the chance of complaints or investigations. You build trust because employees feel safe, they feel respected, and they feel supported at work. You also create structure and consistency, which makes the day-to-day management so much easier. And you save time because you're not scrambling to fix issues reactively. So that being said, think of compliance as the foundation for your business. You do not need to do everything at once, especially for small teams. Start with the basics and build from there as you grow. Strong compliance also supports your overall efficiency by preventing disruptions from injuries, disputes, or investigations. Over the next few slides, we will talk about the posters and policies that you are required to have. What is required depends on the number of employees you have in your organization. And when we say number of employees, generally we look at the number of employees that you have on your payroll, regardless of full-time, part-time, or casual status. So if they're on your payroll, then you can count them in the numbers. And of course, as mentioned earlier, these still apply to remote workplaces. To start off, these are some of the posters that are required in the workplace. First, for the Employment Standards Act, every workplace that is covered by the ESA must give each employee a copy of this poster within 30 days of their start date. You can provide it as a printed copy during onboarding or send it electronically. We recommend including it right in their offer package so that it's taken care of from the start. For the Occupational Health and Safety Act, workplaces that are covered by the Occupational Health and Safety Act must display a copy of the Act, often called the Green Book, in a visible spot where everyone can access it. You can download it for free from the Ontario website or order printed copies from Service Ontario. You must also provide the Health and Safety at Work Prevention Starts Here poster. It outlines the rights and responsibility of workers, supervisors, and employers, as well as the Ministry of Labor's contact number. It must be displayed in English and in the majority language of the workplace and printed at least in letter size. Fourth, if your business falls under WSIB, you must post the In Case of Injury or Illness at Work poster, sometimes known as Form 82. It lays out the steps that workers and employers must take if an injury occurs and includes the WSIB's contact information. It needs to be posted in a clear, prominent location. Again, your health and safety board would be a great spot. And lastly, for workplaces covered by the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, you also need to post the official no smoking, no vaping signs at entrances, exits, and in washrooms. They must be the official versions provided by the ministry. This, of course, does not apply to fully remote workplaces. Within our guide, there are free links to all of these posters so that you can download and post them easily. Now we will take a look at the policies required in the workplace, and we have outlined the number of employees that each one applies to on this slide below. So the first two, for your health and safety policy, every employer must have one under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. It needs to clearly state your commitment to a safe workplace and outline how you will achieve that through your health and safety program. Your workplace violence and workplace harassment policies are also mandatory. These policies and programs must be reviewed annually and shared with all employees. If you have 6 or more employees, they must be written and posted. If you have 5 or fewer, you can technically communicate them verbally with your team unless an inspector requires them to be in writing. So for that reason, our suggestion, best practice, is to put them in writing now, especially if you anticipate to grow in the near future. These 2 policies and programs must be developed in consultation with your health and safety rep or your joint health and safety committee. They must be signed by the most senior person in the company, reviewed every year, shared with your team, and posted on your health and safety board or on your online shared folder so that they are easily accessible. These policies show employees that you take compliance seriously and they are often the first thing that a Ministry of Labour inspector will ask to see. They do not need to be long or complicated. Simple, clear, easy to understand policies are always best. Moving on to the third one. If you have 10 or more employees, you must comply with the Pay Equity Act. This means making sure men and women are paid fairly when doing work of equal value. You need to create a pay equity plan and post it in the workplace and update it when jobs or pay structures change. Even for smaller teams, reviewing your pay regularly really helps to build trust and transparency with your employees. And for the last 2 policies, if your business has 25 or more employees on January 1st of any year, you must have a written policy on disconnecting from work. It applies to all employees and must be shared with everyone on your team. And similarly, the electronic monitoring policy, if you have 25 or more employees on January 1st, you must have a written policy by March 1st that states if and how employees are electronically monitored. This policy must be shared with employees and any assignment workers. And lastly, before we move into some other considerations, there is also a training requirement for all staff. Training is one of the biggest compliance areas for small businesses, and it's often overlooked. Every employer has mandatory training requirements, even if you only have 1 employee. First, all employees must complete AODA and Human Rights Code training. If you provide goods, services, or facilities, your team must be trained on the AODA requirements that apply to their role and on the Human Rights Code as it relates to accommodating people with disabilities. Everyone must also complete health and safety awareness training. There are 2 versions, one for workers and one for supervisors. Make sure that you have the people that are supervising staff take the 5-step program that is dedicated to supervisors, and then the employees take the 4-step awareness training. When someone is moving into a supervisor role, they then need to take that 5-step program. Third, workplace violence and harassment training is also required. We talked earlier about the written policies. Employees must be trained on those policies and programs so that they know their rights and understand how to report concerns. And finally, WMIS training is required if your workplace uses or stores hazardous products. Many small businesses or offices that are strictly office-based assume that this does not apply to them, but common cleaning supplies or basic office products like printer toner can fall under WMIS. Training helps employees handle and store these materials safely. And as a little side note, if you have not updated your safety data sheets or your SDS sheets in the past 3 years, this needs to be done. New regulations that have been in a transition period officially kicked in on December 14th, 2025, which means that the ministry inspectors will be looking to ensure that all SDS sheets are up to date. Our HR tip is to make training part of your onboarding process. It gives new hires clarity right from the start and ensures that you are staying compliant. Keep copies of certificates or attendance records in your health and safety binder or electronically, and put one in each employee's file so that everything is easy to find if an inspector asks to see them. After the initial rollout of getting everyone trained, we then suggest that you start to implement an annual health and safety update meeting where you can review everything again, highlighting anything that has come up over the past year or changed. It also ensures that employees are keeping it top of mind. Then have everyone sign off on attending the health and safety training and updates, and then file that into your records. Before we finish up, we have a few other considerations for you to explore. Whether you plan to stay small or grow over time, these are the foundational tools that you want to have in place. They aren't legally required, but they do prevent misunderstandings, they set clear expectations, and they help you create a consistent and professional employee experience. Start with employment contracts. A good contract protects both you and the employee by outlining the terms of employment clearly from day one. We consult with employment lawyers on all of our contracts. Job descriptions are equally as important. They clarify responsibilities, expectations, and reporting relationships, and they become essential when you're hiring, managing performance, or handling accommodation requests. An employee handbook is another valuable tool. It doesn't need to be long. Even a 10 to 15 page handbook can cover the essentials like your code of conduct, your privacy and confidentiality policy, accommodation practices, remote work expectations, and how your progressive discipline policy works. It gives employees a clear understanding of what it means to work with you, all in one central location. A health and safety handbook to go along with your health and safety policies and procedures gives structure to your safety program. It will help employees understand the responsibilities and make day-to-day operations much smoother. Again, all in one nice central location. And lastly, a new hire checklist keeps everything organized during onboarding so that nothing gets missed. Our guidebook does include a template that you can use. These documents help you to create clarity, consistency, and confidence for your team and reduce headaches later on. If you are watching this recording, then that means you likely did not make it to our live webinar. So what we did was we wrote down a couple of the questions that came in, and I will share those answers now. So the first one was, where should I start if I feel behind on compliance? Okay, so we suggest starting with the basics, your required policies, required posters, and the mandatory training for your team. From there, start to review or create your employment contracts and your job descriptions. You don't need to put everything in place all at once. Build it out step by step. The second question, how do I stay on top of changes to employment laws without feeling overwhelmed? This was a great question, and I guess that's where we can definitely help as well. You can follow along our LinkedIn page for updates or our blog. We're always sending out updates whenever they come in. Employment law firms are also a really great resource. We suggest choosing one reliable source and either check it periodically or subscribe to their updates if that's an option. Also, just a note, be very careful about Googling when it comes to employment law or questions about HR, making sure that you're using the ontario.ca webpage when looking up the Employment Standards Act, for example. Try to stay away from ChatGPT HR. We'd much rather you just send us a quick note or give us a call. We are always happy to point you in the right direction. And the last question that we got was, do I need to pay for time spent in health and safety training? And the answer is yes. Mandatory training time is paid work time under the Employment Standards Act. And that brings us to the end. As a reminder, at CulturedHR, we focus on making compliance practical, clear, and human. We help small businesses build strong foundations without the stress. We can support you in building or refreshing your employee handbook, reviewing or creating compliant policies, and putting the right health and safety programs in place. We can also help you attract, hire, and onboard new employees so your team starts off strong. And of course, we do offer training for managers and teams so that everyone understands their responsibilities. HR can be hard to navigate. You do not have to figure it out on your own. We are here to guide you step by step and give you the clarity and confidence that you need to run your business without second-guessing HR compliance. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope the session gave you some clarity and practical steps that you can take back to your business. As a final reminder, we do have a small business requirements guidebook available, which explores in more detail all of the topics that we covered today. If you have a question or want to talk through a specific situation, we would be happy to set up a Teams conversation or a phone call to walk through it together with you. Thanks again, and we look forward to connecting soon.